First item of business is the approval of the minutes of the February 17th meeting. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
I'll second it.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None being heard, motion carries. Application P09-1/1A filed by Salina Airport Authority requesting approval of a replat of portion of blocks 4 and 5 in Schilling Subdivision, number 5, to be known as Airport Service Center Subdivision. Dean?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'll let representatives of the Airport Authority explain their project. They can certainly do that better in more detail than we can, but I don't think any of your tenures date back to 1998, but I certainly remember at the time Tim Rogers, the Executive Director of the Airport Authority, decided to undertake a comprehensive replatting of the entire Schilling subdivision, the entire former air base there, and it was a pretty daunting undertaking, but we had areas there where we had undefined property boundaries and right-of-ways. We had gaps in properties that were unknown, and so the purpose of the Schilling subdivision replatting process was to go in and establish right-of-ways for streets, to establish what was public, what was no longer public, what easements were we going to keep with utilities in it that the city would maintain, drainage right-of-ways, a whole list of things that were addressed in that replat. And that occurred in 1998, and Schilling Subdivision number 5 comprised 477 acres. There were 14 property owners in there in addition to the Airport Authority. That included the state of Kansas with the KSU Salina campus, the school district with the VOTEC campus. This area was eventually subdivided into 124 lots comprising 15 separate blocks. And John's just showing you the north half there, but this entire drawing there is Schilling Subdivision number 5 that went all the way down to Bailey Road and the airport terminal. But there are a couple items there that were important. Scanlon Avenue that went through the Raytheon aircraft site and the VOTEC campus, that was eliminated. Olkey Road, DeRussy Road, Lucas Road, a number of those were eliminated. General Gym that used to run straight east over to Centennial Road was closed and a curb cut filled in, and Scanlon was realigned to intersect with Centennial Road instead of going up through the VOTEC campus. And then down by the airport terminal building, Bailey Road was realigned. There was a cul-de-sac that was created right here. This is Arnold Court, and there was an odd-shaped lot created right in here, and the thought at the time was that was where a new FAA tower was going to get built, and so a separate lot was created for that, and it turned out it got built farther to the west and not in that location, and so that has been kind of an odd lot that has not really fit with the pattern there. Also, having Arnold Court as a public street to provide public access to that lot hasn't really fit with the security plan for the airport area. But what they have underway is a plan to construct a large painting hangar for aircraft, approximately 37,000 square feet. And in looking at that, they were looking at replatting the shaded, I guess you have the other map there, John. This area that's shaded there, that is the area that is subject to replat, and they were looking to combine that into 6 lots. They were going to close and vacate the right-of-way for Arnold Court north of General Gym Road, and then they were going to vacate some existing utility and drainage easements and dedicate new ones to get around the proposed building footprint. So kind of a summary of that was a 37,000 paint hanger facility, relocation of utilities around that footprint, elimination of the odd-shaped FAA tower lot, merger of 7 platted lots rearranged into 6. Arnold Court, which is today a public street, would be eliminated as a public street, and a new access gate would be constructed closer to General Jim Road. The other item there, which is really our only item that we think needs to be discussed by the commission and the right course of action selected, is as proposed. I think you've got the proposed layout, John. When we had a cul-de-sac up here and a public right-of-way, that would have given these 2 lots access and frontage off a public street. When we eliminate those, then we've created a situation whereby this lot, which we're reading as proposed lot 4, and this lot, proposed lot 5, are landlocked. They don't have any frontage on or guaranteed access to General Jim Road. And so there's 2 approaches that could be taken there. If the airport authority wishes to request a waiver of that frontage requirement, then this configuration could work with some guarantees in place for how public and emergency access would be maintained. That could be done by designating a strip in there that was right away as to be an access easement for vehicular traffic, just to ensure that that's always available and doesn't get built over. Or the other option would be to take, which may or may not defeat the purpose of the replat, but if you made this proposed lot 5 and eliminated this lot line and merged it here, it would have frontage on General Jim Road. And if you made this all one lot up to here and merged it together, then it would have frontage on General Jim Road. So those are really the 2 options. And we'd want to hear from the airport authority about what works best for their plans. The other thing that comes into play here is that they have some obligations to secure the airport facility through security fencing and access gates, and so you have to work that into the equation as well. There'll be places there where you do have public access, but there'll also be places where they won't want the public to get into. So I think that's from a plat layout and commission action standpoint. The only thing we would want to look at is, are they requesting a exception to the requirement that lots have frontage on a street for lots 4 and 5? If so, how would public access be ensured? And then if not, then the other option would be to take lot 3 and lot 5 and lot 2 and lot 4 and merge those together. So with that, I'd be open for any questions that you have about our report. Again, they've got better information about their plans.
Any questions of staff? Would the applicant's representative care to address the commission, please? Are you the applicant's representative?
Right here.
Okay. Oh, I didn't see it. Mr. Rogers?
Status of those 2 lots and how we might either ensure access or merge those into one. Before, when we had Arnold Court up like this, and we had public right-of-way up into here, this lot and this lot had frontage and access on a right-of-way. When we eliminate that, technically this lot and this lot are landlocked. So the options are to keep those as separate lots and grant an exception to the frontage requirement, but indicate how access to those 2 lots would be obtained. Or the other option would be to perhaps merge 3 and 5 or I guess 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 together. That way they would have their frontage on General Gym.
Good afternoon. I'm Tim Rogers, the Executive Director for the Salina Airport Authority. It's almost 6 of one, half a dozen of another. Functionally, the property is owned by the Salina Airport Authority. Functionally, the buildings are not sold. They are lease properties only. By FAA deed restriction, the buildings are not sold, and they are for a specific use unique in this community, and that's aviation service center use. We can go either way, but from the function standpoint, the tenants are going to be granted access to those buildings by the Salina Airport Authority through controlled gate access at many times in accordance in compliance with an airport security plan. We do need driveway access off the General Gym Road, and this platting process and the construction process will provide that at 2 locations off of General Gym Road as we provide access to the current Hangar 600, the 69,000 square foot facility that was recently completed by the Airport Authority, and as we develop the site east of Hangar 600 for a future aircraft paint facility. The prospects and the companies we were speaking to about occupying Hangar 600 have indicated to bring a project to Salina and Saline County that an aircraft paint facility is the next key structure or key service that is needed at what we have branded as the Salina Aviation Service Center. We have 2 existing tenants that have expressed the need for an aircraft paint facility. And the site that we are replatting and that we are designing for construction on this site, we're designing, planning for a 39,000 to 49,000 aircraft paint facility. The 2 existing industries that require that paint operation would be Hawker Beechcraft Corporation, which does a number of aircraft sub-assemblies here at Salina that are shipped to Wichita, Kansas for final assembly at Hawker Beechcraft's facilities at Wichita. The addition of an aircraft paint facility here will enable the company to actually improve and do more work here and add value here at Salina, Kansas before the components go to Wichita for final assembly. Then the other company that is existing tenant that's needing facilities for paint would be CAV Aerospace. CAV has a significant project that starts up this summer that will be putting new ice protection panels on the Cessna Caravan. They already have their existing aircraft that they modify here at Salina. They need to put ice protection on and go ahead and paint those aircraft. The larger Caravan, more paint will need to be done as they mod this aircraft, take off a de-icing boot system, add a rigid porous panel onto the leading edge of the wings for ice protection, ice protection fluids to flow out onto the wings. And as a customer brings an aircraft to Salina, Kansas, at the Aviation Service Center, they can offer an additional service. While your aircraft is on the ground for 3 weeks, another 2 weeks here, another 3 days here, depending on scheduling and availability, we can give you a whole new paint job also in the facility. Again, it's part of an overall strategic plan adopted by the Salina Airport Authority in partnership with the City of Salina, Saline County, and the Salina Area Chamber of Commerce as far as an economic development strategy and overall marketing and recruiting plan. This is part of the facility portion of that plan. So getting back to the question, whether or not it's the exception is granted or we replat, we can do either one.
Is there any ungated or unrestricted access? There's a parking lot proposed on the north side of the new hangar. Do you have to pass through an access gate to get there?
The present design, no. But depending on the tenant and the tenant's requirements, and that's what really drives or governs the aspect, the tenant may require, as Hawker Beechcraft does, a gated, secure access to, and until we actually construct and finalize lease negotiations for the construction of the paint hangar, it is hard for me to tell you today whether or not that is
it would seem to me that a justification for granting an exception to the street frontage and access requirement is the unique circumstance of the airport and the gated, secure
Right.
access. We wouldn't want a public street up there anyway to provide that, so maybe the best way to address that would be to request that those lots be created without frontage or access to a public street, and just indicate a note on the plat that the access will be through gated, secure
That is
access.
the best situation for the airport authority and ultimately for the tenant involved. I can share with the Planning Commission that the aircraft paint hangar could be associated with a Department of Defense contract that would be associated with a aircraft rebuild program that would be 10 years in length at a value of about $1.5 billion. Reason why I give you that information to draw upon and rely upon is that the DoD part of that is significant, and that if that project goes into Hangar 600 and Hangar 603, which would be the paint hangar, all that access would be controlled. If the paint hangar is to one of the companies that have indicated interest that they do kind of the public at large, they're more of a commercial paint operation, that driveway would be it'd be more to the customers coming in and out to drop off and pick up and exchange with their aircraft. So it really depends upon the final tenant, and we have both. But that would be, the preference would be that we provide the access off of General Gym Road, but with in essence the private driveways.
Tim, could you show us on the map there where those two secure driveways might be?
Yes. We have right now at Arnold Court, and Dean, I'm going the right direction here.
Yes.
This is the current cul-de-sac is down to here, correct?
Yeah.
And then we would remove down to here, this would become a private drive, and we would have the driveway providing access into Hangar 600 and into this area here. And we come down to, this is building 655. Generally, this would be the driveway into Hangar 600 coming in this direction, passing by building 602 and into this area. So we have an access point here, access point there. We also have access off of from the other side internally through the Hawker Beechcraft internal roadway system.
And the paint building? The paint building?
It's right in this location.
And these are typically like carded or keypad type?
It's a card
Access.
system, and it's similar to our ID card system with a gate card that's issued by the airport authority based upon the application by those that are authorized into that area.
Any other questions of the applicant?
That helps clarify it for staff, that the nature of the facilities that those two lots are designed to accommodate creates a need for gated, secure access, which would actually be a strong justification for not having public street access.
Absolutely. Any other questions or clarification for staff or the applicant?
Dean, I would have a question concerning your need for emergency vehicle access. That can all be addressed through either method, be it more
Yeah, I think
likely.
Tim can address that, how that would work for emergency access.
We are working, the Salina Airport Authority, aircraft rescue firefighting staff, and the Airport Authority's Manager of Operations, Safety and Security, Gunnar Wiles. We are working with the Salina Fire Department to install at our perimeter gates preempters. Try to quickly go through when an emergency vehicle hits an intersection in this community. Emergency vehicle is using a preempter, a flashing strobe light that opens up the intersection. for that emergency vehicle. The same type of preemptor can be placed on an electric gate, and we have tested this the latter part of this year. We are now installing 4 additional preemptors on gates that Airport Authority, Salina Fire Department, EMS, Police Department, and Sheriff's officers can approach a gate and use the preemptor, put the same device on the gate. The gate opens up automatically in advance of that emergency vehicle without even needing a key card. The equipment's already on board emergency vehicles in the county, city, and those responders would use those preemptors at those gates to gain access.
Thank you, Tim.
Thank you.
Great.
Any further questions?
I think those were our 2 main questions, just in reviewing it, was the need for public access and the desire is actually to have no public access. And then the other question I think Tim addressed was the question of emergency access if you have gates. So we think those have been addressed. So this is really a cleanup item where we're taking an odd-shaped lot that was no longer functioning, eliminating a public street that doesn't really serve any purpose anymore, and realigning some easements to accommodate a large hangar footprint.
Do we need to make a caveat in that motion about that, or do we just need to note that those lots were not in conformance due to security nature? And
I think if we grant an exception for the frontage requirements for proposed lots 4 and 5 based on the need for gated security access as opposed to public street access, that would be justification. And then what we'll do is we'll ask BWR, the surveyor and engineer, just to put a note on the plat as to how access to those 2 hangar lots would be arranged.
any further discussion? Do I hear a motion?
I move the approval of application P09-1/1A, making an exception for the frontage requirements for lots 4 and 5 due to the need for security and gated access.
I'll second that.
Been moved and seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None being heard, motion carries.
Thank you.
Thanks, Tim.
Next item is application Z93-13B, filed by First Bank Kansas, requesting approval of an amended site development plan for property legally described as Lot 1, Block 1 in the replat of the Walmart subdivision / First Bank addition and addressed as 2850 South 9th Street. Dean?
Well, you'll have to excuse our venture into the history lesson, but it was kind of fun to recreate some of the different things that had happened out here, and Mr. Davison, the representative for First Bank, is formerly a Planning Commission member. So we first looked at this and the whole traffic pattern situation back in 1993, or just if you back up a step, the Walmart project was developed in 1989. There was nothing out there at the time. Salina stopped just south of the Mid-State Plaza. You had the drive-in theater, and then Walmart was out there all by itself. And it was not nearly as big as it is now. Just north of Walmart was a Earth Care Garden Center. And so in 1993, First Bank Kansas had entered into a contract to purchase the front part of the Earth Care site out there. And so they applied for a change in zoning and for a plat of the site at that front portion of the Earth Care site, and that went in front of the Planning Commission on November 16th, 1993, and their plat and their site plan was approved subject to 3 conditions, and then the City Commission approved the ordinance rezoning the property. One of the things that doesn't show up well, it shows up a little here, and I think it caused some confusion about numbers of spaces and that type of thing. So at least when this was first proposed, there was an existing lot right here that was used by Earth Care employees, and it was primarily a gravel lot, but with that lot and with the spaces proposed in front, there were a total of 25 spaces we determined, the Planning Commission determined available on the site. That was carried over into the Planning Commission action. The building permit was issued with a requirement, or at least a notation, that 25 spaces be required. And as you can see from this photo, there was full access on the frontage road in front of the bank site. Well, in 1998, Walmart came in, and they were, and I guess Lloyd can fill this in, I can't remember, I think maybe by this time First Bank had acquired all the remaining Earth Care property, but Walmart came in and they were wanting to convert their existing center into a super center with full grocery. And so they were looking to take the Earth Care site, incorporate it into the Walmart site, almost double the size of their store, move a detention pond, and you'll note in this picture, well, in the previous 93 picture, First Bank was to have its own pond. This area right here was set aside for a small detention basin. What eventually worked out was that the location and sizing of Walmart's new pond took care of the need for having that separate pond there. But one of the concerns at the time of this total project was that there was a signal here. This whole area here was completely redesigned. The whole goal was to try to get traffic up to here and get it out here, even though that's not centered on the site. This is where the signalized intersection was. There was a crossing here, but it wasn't signalized, and so there was a lot of work done right in this area to create stacking. There was a frontage road here. It was eliminated, and Walmart engineers wanted to completely eliminate that. Well, as a kind of a compromise, the main concern was that you'd have people driving down this frontage road. They'd get to here, you'd have all these cars stacked here, and they wouldn't be able to go anywhere if they were trying to get back out to 9th Street. So the compromise was to give this stretch of right-of-way here back to First Bank, basically create a half-street that was northbound only. So instead of 40 feet of right-of-way, you had 20. This was taken out of the frontage road and given to First Bank, and they were able to utilize that for parking. And so it was kind of a half and half situation. Those changes were approved by the Planning Commission in 1998 and the City Commission later through an ordinance. Well, now we're back looking at changes and improvements to that corridor between Belmont and Riffle, and so and Dan and Kent from the engineering can explain the rationales a little better. At the time, the reason for locating the signal up to the north was KDOT and others had indicated that they wanted to get the signal as far away from Schilling as they could, and they thought that that was a better location than closer to Schilling. Part of that has to do with our signals not being synchronized with each other. So what we had, the situation was that you had, this was the primary high traffic entrance, and then you had a secondary crossover down here. Well, the idea now in the South 9th Corridor improvements is that this would become the primary entrance into Walmart, and this would be signalized. This signal would come out, and this would be more of a secondary area. Well, if that is the case, then a lot of the concerns
from volume and stacking and all that existed in 1998, when that was the primary entrance, would not be of concern here. So the First Bank was approached about, and I think they were favorable to having that being a full use frontage road again, but it would result in them losing that parking that they had utilized out in the right-of-way. So the city had an agreement in principle with First Bank that we would work with them in designing additional parking spaces to take that place. Well, we had 29 at one point. At one time, we determined 25 were needed, and that's what the Planning Commission determined in 1993. In looking at it now, First Bank's request is to add 4 additional spaces on the west side, resulting in a total of 22. So they're requesting that reduction, at least partially. The justification for that is that at this location they have a higher proportion of drive-through business and traffic compared to walk-in that they do. And so the reason for this being in front of you is twofold: to show you, let you comment on the change to the circulation pattern out front. The other thing to do would be to grant First Bank's request to go from 25 down to 22 spaces on their approved site plan. I think I covered that as far as the background of what had happened over time and why this is back again. I might give Dan or Kent a little bit of time. We brought in the big picture here. John has the aerial, but let Dan give you a summation of what the vision is from Belmont down to Riffle and the way it changes to 9th Street.
Okay, thank you, Dean. Kent and I got in on this project kind of after it was in its initial planning stages, so we've taken the project to bid with the understanding that the new signal location is definitely going to be where Dean talked about, at the main Walmart entrance there, which is, what is that street, Kent? Diebold? Diebold, thank you, John. John's showing it to us there. It has more storage area, basically, was, from what we can understand, the reason for putting it there. To the north is Sam's. Is that Sam's Place? Right there. It's fairly short, as well as be the west side of 9th there. Same problems exist, where if you have a lot of stacking and that being your main entrance, that would be a problem for traffic, more or less, with the frontage road on the west side of 9th, trying to get into that main entrance and that being the main signalized area. So we've moved it to the south, to Diebold, and we're going to create some parking improvements with Walmart, in conjunction with Walmart, to allow more storage of cars on the west side, on the Walmart side, as well as the east side, which is Diebold. It'll have plenty of storage for cars and to commerce. And then we'll actually eliminate the median opening there to the north at Sam's Place, so that people won't be able to cross there anymore. You'll still be able to get in. If you're on the correct side of the road, you can turn into those places. Is there'll be a left in? Is that right, Kent? Okay. Yeah.
You're also talking about a complete conversion to curb and gutter section with
correct.
Enhanced medians and.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this section will match the north improvements basically that have been done out there. So it'll look, basically the median will be raised. It'll be fairly similar in alignment. We'll have to actually. It's a pretty wide right-of-way out there. The lanes are pretty far apart. We're actually going to move them to match the north section. They'll move closer to each other, really. But the main entrance now is going to be at Diebold with a signal that will be synchronized with shilling. We will tie those two together so they will work correctly, and how correctly as we can synchronize them, basically. The original intent was to keep signals as far apart as possible, but in this case it just isn't going to work. So we had to really you wouldn't want to signal that close if you had your choice, that's for sure. But we're going to synchronize them and keep them coordinated together, and based on the two options, this was the best option that Wilson and prior engineers and planners came up with. Dean was pretty involved with this, I know, so this is the best option for the corridor, and the new signal will definitely be at DeBold. What have I missed? Dean, what else?
I think the only thing that might the Planning Commission might be involved with in the future is which they were in '98, is if to make this work really is going to require some
Yeah.
modifications in here to be done by Walmart that I don't, if we're going to encourage all that traffic through there, we're not going to want to have people pulling into and backing out of stalls there, so there's probably going to be some changes to their site plan and circulation plan that will probably come back to the Planning Commission to look at the changes on the Walmart site itself. But to make Diebold work as the primary access point is going to require some changes within the Walmart parking lot and circulation itself. I don't they have more than enough parking spaces, so that it's not going to be an issue, except maybe in their minds of lost parking spaces. The only thing I noticed that's a little, I can't explain, is that Walmart's property actually comes out to here. This was originally planted, Avenue came down to here at this point, but this was eliminated as a public frontage road, so Walmart's property actually goes out like this. And so this is not a street or any right-of-way anymore. But other than that, I think that's a good representation of what the circumstances are out there.
Does that mean that they could add parking spaces out there to the east?
They basically are using it for parking lot circulation today. Whether they wanted to maintain that or they're probably going to have to do something a little different there if they make a throat for stacking coming in there to the front of the store. But to really make that work is going to require some cooperation on Walmart's part to rework their parking lot.
Have we had any discussion with them?
Yes, we've been working really closely with Walmart. They're going to have to, in cooperation with this, they had to kind of relay out their parking lot, and Wilson helped them, work with them quite a bit on this to help them make the necessary improvements. So we've been working pretty closely with them on this job, and they have changed staff members, which has delayed the process some, but it's, as far as we know, it's still in the works, and they've got a plan that's going to work. It's just we need to get them to cooperate to get it done. Basically, we have bid South 9th. We're not going to start till this summer, but we're still in the cooperation with them right now to get everything finalized.
What's the timeline?
Timeline for Walmart?
No, for them to get it done. 1 week, 2 weeks, a month?
It's a good question. Do you know, Kent? Get done with what? Their improvements?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, their improvements are basically, a lot of it would be restriping of their parking lot, and then some. They'd have to give us an easement to allow the stacking. We're going to go about 180 feet back of center line of the road, so we'll have actually some improvements on their property, so they have to give us an easement for that. And then they actually are responsible for their improvements beyond that easement to kind of realign their parking lot in the center aisle and do some restriping for it. So that, our first phase of our project, this won't probably even start possibly till even 2010 on our project.
Oh.
So it's not a major hurry for Walmart to get done, which is the problem. They have plenty of other things to do, and they have not seen this as a real urgency yet. So we're still trying to get them to finalize their plan, but it's been a challenge so far.
Dean, it would appear, and I'm probably wrong in my assessment, but it looks to me like you're going to lose one left turn opportunity from Walmart headed back north. And then is that going to force an increased demand on the south exit from Walmart onto Schilling, which is already a congested problem?
is the plan not to allow people coming out at the Sam's Place intersection to turn left or north?
That's correct.
So they can only go right or straight across? Or is the crossover eliminated?
Crossover is limited. They can't go straight across. They can only make a right.
And see, most of the population of Salina, of course, is north there, so I think most people are trying to make left turns out of Walmart. I mean, that would be my assessment.
That's correct.
What about at Sullivan Drive? Is that crossover still there?
Nope, that will be eliminated as well. There will be a northbound left turn that you can turn into Sullivan, but it doesn't help anybody trying to go north. You cannot make a left turn and go north.
So you're
Out of
only,
Sullivan.
if I was coming out here and I was wanting to get north, my only option would be to take Planet Avenue up to Belmont.
Well, and then there's a possible median break at the Country Inn Suites Road. It's kind of an access for Dell's, Country Inn, and Tucson's. There is an entrance there with a median break at that location. So that could be another option. It will not be signalized, but in the future, that would be the future location of a median break that would possibly be signalized in the future. If the Dooley property ever develops, that would be a possibility there. That's the next place for traffic.
I don't. At the Diebold intersection there today, theoretically, you can make a left turn there, but I don't think it's very heavily used because people don't have that much confidence they can ever get out of there. But I think if that's going to be in the center of things and being signalized, I still think the majority of traffic that's going to try to get out of there to go north is going to use the center entrance and be signalized. But I think you're correct that if people feel like the stacking is too long or feel trapped, they may go down to the south driveway and then try to turn to get on Schilling Road instead. And that was a Wilson and Company recommendation to close that crossover off?
Yes. Yeah, there's a lot of closing of crossovers here. The one on Schilling's going to close as well. On the south edge there, John, if you can pull the south end, yeah, right there, basically. There's a median break there that doesn't function very well right now with Quick Shop and Walmart. That's a lot of traffic. It's very busy coming off the interstate. It's very short. So that'll actually close as well, and they'll allow left turns in, but you won't be able to really cross or go out at in that location.
I guess
That will
that will
eliminate
eliminate that
left.
option of
Correct.
concern.
That's correct. So really, the only option is to take a right out of either entrance. Basically, you have to go right and go south to Schilling, and then you can go either over to Ohio or it's basically eliminated quite a few crossings. So you're saying really the problem is people wanting to go north on 9th Street. That's really the issue.
Everybody leaving Walmart goes north.
The population.
I go to Schilling.
Right.
Yeah,
to the north.
well, I can eliminating that thing on Schilling is A-okay with me. That thing's an impossibility to get out. I'm with you. Just like the north one at the old mall, so you sit there for 20 minutes, so losing that isn't going to hurt me, but it's going to put a lot of traffic on the board.
Yeah.
Maybe, if it's a long light, maybe it'll work. Yeah, that thing on Schilling's I'm surprised we don't have accidents out there daily.
That is hard to get across, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if people want to go north, they're going to have to go across to Diebold, then up. Seems like that's not.
Well, there's a median break. DeBold that's the light. That'll be the signal.
Yes.
DeBold.
Yeah.
That's you'll have a signalized intersection. It'll be a safe turning movement. That's where people are going to go if you want to go north. That is the only option at this
the
point.
only option.
That's correct. I mean, we've had lots of options in the past, which may be the reason for the disjunction out there. So I guess, but maybe going down to one option is a concern.
I think if the light's long enough, that DeBolt will probably be fine. I mean, I don't think you're not, it's not like there's a mass exodus at one time from Walmart, like a rock concert getting let out or something like that, but, I mean, you're right, yeah, unless it's Christmas, and we'll be able to ebb and, I mean, people have to understand it, at busy times, yeah, that's gonna happen, but I think for the most, that probably should work, but I'm all for eliminating that shilling break. I mean, it's gonna limit, people are gonna have to be thinking, hey, if I'm gonna go south to Ohio, I need to go out DeBolt and turn on Schilling. I mean, people are going to have to rethink their thinking, but I actually think it'll help the traffic flow along Schilling a lot better, so maybe that's the only option, like what you're saying. I'd like to think people at Wilson Company are smarter than I on traffic flow, so I hope.
During the
They make more money than I do, I'm sure.
during the growing season, when the plant area is open, that's then forcing people to go back up through,
Walmart.
yeah.
I mean, and Dean was right. You could take, is it Planet on that side? Planet Avenue. You could take Planet up to Belmont. There's a signal there. Planet is developed all the way to Belmont, and or you can go up to the country inn. So there is still other options if you want to do it.
And you're really developing a frontage road there anyway, which
Correct.
is really...
Which is what you want.
Yeah, Salina just isn't used to the concept of frontage roads. We always think we should be able to instantly leave mom and pops and jump right onto the main drive. We just have to get into the concept of frontage roads.
You could still leave Walmart onto Schilling. You just can't turn into Walmart off of Schilling. Is that right?
You wouldn't be able
That
to,
off
if you were coming southbound on,
What Dan's saying is if you come out of
Yes.
here
Yes.
and you want to make a left turn
Yes.
to go this way,
Can't do
you're not
it.
going to be able to make it.
No.
Right.
Won't be able to do that anymore.
That's very
Dean, you
hard
have the
anyway.
big, Kent's got the big map there. Does that help us? I don't know if that helps us any. Yeah, that's it.
And you can't go in that way either?
You can go in.
Okay. You just, there'll just be a curve there. Yeah.
We've cut about,
Hold it if you want to point.
You can see here, you can make left ends to both of these areas here, but you won't be able to go across.
from the commerce perspective, there was some concern about, oh, you're hurting my business, Quick Shop especially. They thrive on being able to get in there. Well, theoretically, you still can get in there as much as you want. The question is, you won't be able to get out as easy as you used to. So that was a concern for them, but it was that is a really dangerous intersection, and that was the compromise we came up with. There was some talk about closing the whole thing, and the left in, left out was, or the left in
like, the other thing is
was a
that
possibility.
both Dan and Ken have been quizzing me as to why the Planning Commission required a signal at Riffle Drive. Well, part of the reason for that was to try to draw people who are at the hotels or Wendy's or Quick Shop to go back south, come out to Ninth Street on Riffle Drive, use that protected signal to get back out. Even if you're getting back to Schilling Road, that's still faster sometimes to go that way.
That is.
Yeah.
Get the light and get
Safer.
back up to Schilling that way than to try to get out through the north. So part of that was to provide a gaps and a break to get out onto Ninth Street.
And kind of your abandoning of that parking lot is to sort of make a frontage road there, I assume. You're sort of returning that into a frontage road. So we're not really losing, I don't think, an entrance at Sam's. We're just sort of pushing it back down the other way, and maybe that will help with traffic flow a lot better. I think it's a smarter layout.
Just from what we've learned, there's been a lot of thought and put into this, but what was the 100% perfect solution? I don't think there was one there. So it's a little bit of a balancing act, and okay, this is going to be better than maybe there was before, but it's still not a perfect situation. That's for sure.
It appears to be a much safer solution.
It's going to be safer.
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Without a
really
doubt.
what they're looking at,
Yeah.
but
And from a
not as
commerce
convenient, maybe.
from a commerce perspective, coming off of I-135, and you're not familiar with Salina, I assume there will be signage that directs people back to I-135 after they've been at the motel or they find the room's full, because that's just not obvious in the night to know to go south to get back
I
to
thought about that
I-135.
as well, some signage there that might say, please take Riffle Drive to return to 135, or,
Yeah. Because if you've ever been at Strange Town, you get on those side roads, you don't know exactly.
Yeah.
Driving around in circles at 3 in the morning.
Yeah, that's correct. That's been suggested and something we have to look at. You're exactly right.
If you have GPS, you don't have a problem. huh?
Do we have
Simple sign,
That
you
is
know.
something you still can do.
Do we have a wayfinding, a comprehensive wayfinding plan for signage in the works, or?
Do have it's doesn't really address this area really yet. Kent does it, but we do have some wayfinding signs going in at Crawford and North 9th to the downtown area. That's kind of a start of the wayfinding overall plan.
Now, back to the original request, which is to make Planet Avenue two-way traffic in front of the bank. I personally think that's a nice improvement to that area. It's always seemed awkward anyway, just the feel's not right. So I think that will be helpful there.
And
And the other thing is that we looked at it in more detail and under our current standard and making First Bank come back in with 25 spaces total on their site based on our current minimum requirements, we think would be excessive. So if they are comfortable with the addition of 4 spaces west of the building to get them back to 22, we would be comfortable with that. So really your actions on this application would be to endorse the return of the frontage road in front of the bank to two-way traffic and that the 22 spaces they're proposing would be satisfactory for their site plan.
would the applicant care to address the commission?
Know that I have anything to add. I'm Lloyd Davidson, You're right, that area has been awkward ever since it was built. So we're happy to see it done. It does lose some parking for customers, but we've had ample parking on that side, had employees parking on that side just to make it look like we had more activity. So moving them to the back, and the back side doesn't work for customers. That's going to be all employee parking. And I think at most, that's 11 stalls. If we had everybody there at the same time, we have 9 employees. So we feel like we've got enough. I could easily put another one, but I didn't want to cut down a pretty oak tree, so.
For you.
So
I've got a couple extra cars, I'm short of space, if you don't mind.
we could make a deal.
They can bring them up there and park them.
Yeah, and I'm glad you're talking through all these entrances and exits, because I went through the same struggle meeting with Wilson Engineers, and I do think it'll all work. It is very complicated, but I don't have any other input. If there's questions,
You're okay with the 22 spaces?
yes. If we need more, we will add them, but I hope we grow enough that that's a problem.
Well, it should increase traffic in front of your
Sure will.
place.
One question I had, it had some comments on there about landscaping, and that's just if we disturb landscaping, we need to
Right.
put it
Where
back.
there was a landscape plan that was submitted at the time that the bank was first built. That's still in place, and just means if something gets removed or disturbed, it would be maintained or replaced. It's just reinforcing that earlier condition.
Any further questions of the applicant? Any other questions of staff? Any further discussion? If you're ready to act, is there a motion?
I'd make a motion that we approve the revised site development plan of First State Bank per case number Z93-113B.
4 conditions that the staff outlined.
For condition of the staff, yes. Recommendations.
I'll second that again. I'm Mr. Second today.
Been moved and seconded to approve application Z93-13B. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None being heard, motion carries. Thank you. Other matters?
For other matters, if you want to look at or pull out your calendars, you have in front of you basically the final draft version of the update to the Salina Comprehensive Plan. And the what we're looking at doing is on the 17th, a regular meeting that Gould Evans would be present. We would invite advisory committee members and focus group members, and there would be a study session with Gould Evans highlighting the various elements of this comprehensive plan document. That would be on your regular meeting the 17th. What we had was we had Mr. Welsh, who has the property out there east of Presbyterian Manor. He was pretty excited about the discussion that occurred and the annexations and all that, and was trying to follow up with applications of his own, but they got submitted in not a, somewhat a disjointed fashion. So I think we'll have some preliminary discussion, issue identification with development of his two properties out there, but that would be the only development related items. So I think our goal would be to have the study session at your regular 4 o'clock time, not try to have a separate or different start time for that. And then if you want to look at your calendars, the 31st is 2 weeks from that date. That is a Tuesday, and that was being looked at for the as a special meeting for adoption and action. And the reason for that is that there has to be built-in time for comments, and particularly Saline County to comment in on the comprehensive plan, because it extends out into unincorporated Saline County. And so from a hearing and timing standpoint, the 31st worked better than the other dates for meeting the notice and comment period. So I guess what we'd want to feel for is if that whether that week or that particular day, although it's not a scheduled Planning Commission hearing date, whether that would work for those of you who are here as far as being available to attend. Because if we couldn't get the necessary number of members to attend, it certainly would not be worth doing, because that would be your time for suggestions, revisions, additions, any of those types of things that might be involved in the adoption and implementation of the plan. So from a calendar standpoint, the City Commission does not have opportunity to take action on the plan until the City Planning Commission is comfortable with it. And so the idea is that you'd have a study session, question and answer session with Gould Evans present on the 17th, and then whatever tweaking, adjustments, supplements, whatever, and getting any comments and feedback from Saline County on a formal basis, and then looking at setting a hearing for a special meeting where the only agenda item would be the comprehensive plan.
That has to be published a certain number of days
Yes,
in
it has
advance.
to be published, and we also have to give Saline County a certain lead time to review and comment on, so they will be getting their plan. They've seen draft versions and attended meetings and all, but that will be their official comment period. So to get the notice and comment period in the 31st worked better than the regular meeting the 17th. That would turn it into a two-stage where the focus of the 17th meeting would be questions and answers and clarifications, and then hopefully those are done to a comfort level that the 31st would be the opportunity for public, whether it's focus group, advisory committee, county representatives, whoever who wanted to have a forum to speak on that. That would be held on the 31st and advertised as a public hearing.
There'd be action taken at that meeting
There
to
would-
adopt it.
Yes. I mean, it would be an option to adopt it, or if there's still things you don't feel comfortable with, then certainly you'll have the alternate actions. But the what we've done is in the left-hand side of your pouch in the opening there just kind of gives a overview of the adoption process for the comprehensive plan and what goes into that. And so under the statutes, you are the ones that are causing to be made the comprehensive plan, and it has to be something, a document, and that has to be understood and comfortable by you before it goes anywhere else. Our responsibility, once we have it in a final form, is to do a formal notification to Salina County and say, this is the plan we'd like to adopt. It includes property that is in your jurisdiction. Do you have any formal comments you want to send? And then what we would do is, not for the 17th, but for the 31st, we would have a resolution that would be in front of you for adoption of the plan with any comments that you want to include in there. The other thing is, if, let's say, there are supplemental things or things that you're familiar with that aren't in that plan binder itself, a map or something that you think needs to be referenced, or other studies, whether it's goals as far back as goals for Salina or something like that, that resolution can identify any of those things and make them as addendums or things to the plan. But and then on page 2 there, you have a public notice and hearing. The Planning Commission's the body that actually holds the public hearing with a notice requirement, just like a zoning case. And then, just like a zoning case, you would make a recommendation to the governing body. In other words, that recommend approval outright, recommend with these deletions or clarifications or whatever you make makes you feel comfortable. And then once it gets to the governing body, they can approve your recommendation. If there's an aspect of a recommendation they don't agree with, that can be overturned or overridden, or they can say, we'd like to send this plan back to you for let you discuss this particular area more in depth. And then one thing we do try to do is once a year do a checkup on the plan, and it gets reviewed. And that's the thing about a plan, is it is supposed to be a living document. And we had, I recall in the 92 plan, we were doing amendments to it by 1993 and 1994 just to clarify some things. So those, it's not like it's written in stone or anything. So you have your notebooks there. You should review those. We'll have a study session on the 17th, and if it works for everybody, we will advertise the hearing on the 31st. I can't recall exactly. Ken can tell us how spring break
It's
fits
that
into
week.
is 17th the spring break week?
I won't be here, but
Okay.
I'll be gone too.
do you plan on having any other public presentations at that time?
There will be, well, part of that is driven by the availability of Gould Evans and their schedule, but there will be a study session this coming Monday, not on the entire plan, but just on one aspect of it, areas of change, with the City Commission on the 9th. That is this coming Monday, and then Gould Evans will be here the 17th, and then the 23rd there will be a kind of a follow-up study session with the City Commission. Then the the main public hearing on the 31st, and then it will go from there. But even if you cannot attend on the 17th, if you go through there, and if there's things that you have questions or would like clarifications on, feel free either to, probably the best thing to do would be to email those to Alyssa, who you're corresponding with on attendance and things like that. But if you go through there and there's things that don't make sense to you, or you think need to be better worded or clarified, or something's missing and you're unable to come to the study session, just feel free to send those to Alyssa, and we'll try to address those with Gould Evans.
So the first time that there is planned public access to this is the date that we could take action on it? Seems
Well,
to me-
on the 17th, well, the way it was done in the past was to have a study session ahead of the public hearing. So that is planned here. The unfortunate part of that is that when all that is occurring is that spring break week. That they're going to be having a luncheon for the advisory committee and focus groups on the 17th, and a study session on the 17th, and that is the way the schedule worked. But one thing I've learned since I've moved to Salina was that spring break week is like Christmas break or any other. We have always tried to avoid having major items or even having a meeting at all on the week of spring break for planning commission items, because we've always struggled to get a quorum. So sounds to me like maybe the 31st actually works better than the 17th.
Well, I just hate to set up a time when we know that if we want as much public input and all of that, it doesn't make sense to set up a time when we know is generally a hard time for people.
Yeah,
but you never know.
County Commission trying to shove through an expo center here after all. I mean, come on.
You never know. I mean, it may not affect.
10 a.m.
So, well, let's just say theoretically we said instead of the 17th, we got them to do it the 24th. Would, for those of you who have spring break plans, or would the 24th work better than the 17th?
It would for me.
Or is that too short a period between then and the 31st? Or
Board of Education meeting.
okay.
Oh,
That is
that's small little thing.
Yeah, I'm here for spring break.
Are those
Just don't get vacation.
are those the evening or late
5
afternoon?
o'clock.
5 o'clock.
which if you tried to move this meeting, for example, that.
Right,
it would
but
be difficult for the-
the other option was something like that. If it was a study session format, we could start it at 3 o'clock or something like that on the 24th.
Clarify for me again, Dean, if you will, the hearing aspect of this. You were thinking the hearing would be on the 17th,
No,
and
the-
action on the 31st.
No, the hearing would be on the 31st.
At the same
The-
time of action.
The idea was to bring Gould Evans out, who was the primary author of the plan document, to have them here for in-depth question and answers and explanation all on the 17th. And then if there's anything there that needs tweaking or clarification or any of that, that would occur between then and when you'd be asked to take any action on it. And say, well, I'd feel more comfortable if this section was changed, or if this information was provided or added, or I don't like this recommendation in the plan. And that would give them an opportunity between the study session and the adoption to make that change. But it seems like, and the 10th would be awfully fast, but it seems like moving out of the spring break week would probably to increase public access and ability to to get informed would be to do it other than that time.
But could we do it on the 31st and then at our usually scheduled meeting on the 7th?
Well, I will tell you the other thing that is of significance, and part of it is just the calendaring of things, is that we have, I think, April, if it's the 13th, is the changeover meeting for the city commission, and we have 5 city commissioners who are pretty familiar with
Yeah.
this, and if it all falls together according to this schedule, it would allow them, this present commission, to take it up. Otherwise, you'd be making a recommendation to a commission that would be comprised of 3 brand-new commissioners who, except for Jennifer, would probably say, what is a comprehensive plan? And then to a
As long as
degree,
Jennifer Benine gets elected.
you'd be starting to a degree over. So that is part of it. I guess the best of the limited options would be to try to move that period off of spring break week, just to maximize attendance and not have so many people. And it's not just planning commission members, it could be advisory committee and others who are oftentimes have plans to be away over that spring break week.
So are you talking about moving the hearing to the 24th then?
No, I'm talking about moving the study session to a time where we could get a higher level of public participation and input.
I agree with that.
Because if we schedule this study session and we have the planning commission invite advisory committee, focus group members, and there's a high level of absenteeism because of the spring break schedule, then we haven't really maximized our input from the widest range of people. And that, as Sydney mentioned, that's the goal.
It'd be nice to get across-the-board buy-in on this, you know.
Right. I mean, if
Is there any other time that Gould Evans has scheduled just for general public discussion, or?
again, it was on the 17th, and it was through the advisory committee and focus groups. But in terms of other open houses or things like that, there hadn't been any planned.
Well, it may be a moot point, so.
Yeah, there were a number, during that phase, there were a number of town hall type meetings or meetings at the Stiefel and all, where you had general public invited to attend, and most of the focus group sessions were pretty well attended.
I just thought, I would have expected that there would have been another opportunity like that for the general public to kind of see this, and then, so you're saying that if the meeting's on the 17th, the general public, that would be an opportunity for them to hear it,
To be informed about it.
and then they
Right.
could respond.
Then they would have from there till the, part of, that's part of our responsibility is to get that
Yeah.
word out so the public becomes aware of it. But the study session would or should be open to anybody in the public that's interested, and then the public hearing becomes the mechanism for anyone who's interested to come and speak on it. But, so, in terms of the 17th, you will not be here, and Michael, and then the rest of you would be available, and then,
That's the same week as Kansas Wesleyan. I don't know if that's a problem for Wayne or...
okay, and then the 24th is a potential conflict with Ken's board meeting, but we could potentially address that by having the study session start at 3 instead of 4.
Or later. I mean, our board meetings, probably by 7 o'clock, 7:30, we might be done. It depends.
Right.
Run late.
But
But
the 10th will
overall, the 31st date works
Yeah.
Okay.
I might ask, if you move it to the 10th, the same problem will occur for me, because 10th is a board meeting also.
Okay. Yeah, and Gould Evans may not feel
Right.
quite ready then. But yes, that was, some of it was driven by when is Gould Evans available and how do you maximize their visit to the community. And the 17th was basically lined up as a full day for Gould Evans through lunch time and exposure and things of that nature. So I think what we'll do is try to look at perhaps adjusting that and then using Alyssa to keep you informed by email as to what's happening. But nonetheless, you still get to take your books home and read up and
Written
and I said anything.
Multiple choice.
So there would be no other planning commission action on the 17th?
There would be no action taken at all.
No
other
meeting?
Than,
Or
yeah,
no?
I'd talk to Mr. Welsh on that, but I'd probably
okay.
try to persuade him to just have it all packaged up for April 7th and then not meet at all on the 17th.
Okay.
So if we get the study session moved, I'd probably talk Mr. Welsh into they said he's got a plat and he's got a rezoning, and there were a couple items that weren't filed together, and so it's not going to be a complete hearing by you till the 7th of April anyway.
Email us, Alyssa.
17th isn't even a for sure from Gould Evans. I was just told to go ahead and reserve everything, but Graham Smith wasn't even sure he could be there, so we might be able to move it.
Okay.
Yeah, he might be on spring break.
Let us know. We're
Maybe
adjourned.
he has spring break. I don't know.